Hi, it's John. Welcome to the show and welcome back to the latest edition of the Album War. The premise of this series is to talk about two or more artists or bands who released an album with the same title, regardless of era, regardless of genre. I will discuss these albums, talk about what I like about these albums, what I may not be so crazy about, and I will determine the winner of the Album War. And you could tell me in the comments who you feel wins the Album War. Today, the album title will be Brave New World. We have three bands vying for the title today. As the late, great Ed Darian would say, let's meet the principals. The first artist slash band I'm going to talk about today is a walking, living, breathing legend. This would be this band's third album. It was released in June 1969. I'm talking about the Steve Miller Band with their album Brave New World from Capitol Records. The second band I will be discussing released an album with this title in 1999. They had a slew of big selling albums and rocking hit singles and ballads from the late 70s through the early 80s. They came back in 1990, had probably the biggest hit of their career. And this would be their next album after that album from 1990. I'm talking about Styx with their album Brave New World, which was released in 1999 on CMC International Records. The third band I'm going to talk about today is one of the great heavy metal bands of our lifetime. They released this album in May of 2000, and it would be the return of Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith into the band. I am talking about Iron Maiden with their album Brave New World, released on Portrait Records and re-released on Sanctuary Records. So I've announced these chronologically. I'm going to talk about them chronologically as well. Now, Steve Miller will be the first one I will discuss today. Now, when I was growing up in the 1980s, I was listening to a lot of album-oriented rock, and we had a lot of classic rock on those stations, most notably Rock 107, the home of rock and roll. WEZX-FM, Scranton, Pennsylvania, still locally owned and operated. And back then, they played a lot of Steve Miller Band, particularly his hits from 1973 through 1978. When you were driving around Public Square back in the 80s, you would often hear the songs of the day, but you would also hear two cassettes with the music coming out of these car stereos. You would often hear Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell, and you'd hear Steve Miller Band's Greatest Hits 74 to 78. So I heard Steve Miller all the time when I was a teenager. But my favorite era was his early era when he was doing this blues rock meets psychedelia thing. And back in the day on Rock 107, you'd hear some of those songs. You'd hear Living in USA. You would hear Your Saving Grace. And you'd hear another song that I'm going to talk about today off of this album, Brave New World. So between Rock 107 and this album, Steve Miller Band Anthology, which covered his work from 1968 to 73. There's also another collection specifically called 1968 to 1973 from Steve Miller, but has a different track listing. This is what really got me into this era, which is to date still my favorite era, although I did love the hit making years as well, because those songs had hooks to die for. And I played a lot of those songs in a classic rock cover band called Ripcord in the late 1990s. As a matter of fact, we played 4 songs alone from the Book of Dreams album. So today I'm going to talk about Steve Miller Band's third album, Brave New World. Now, at this point, it was a different sound for the Steve Miller Band. More fire, more psychedelia, more focus on Steve Miller's guitar playing. Back then, we called him Stevie Guitar Miller. And you had a lot more blues elements. You had more acoustic blues. You had more harmonica on those songs. And Steve sang with a lot more expression back then. And it felt more like a band. Whereas you listen to the big hits like Take the Money and Run and Rockin' Me and Jet Airliner, it's more like Steve Miller. But here you could tell it was definitely a band. And that is on full display here on Brave New World. The opening track is the title track, and it opens with a thunderstorm, and then we hear the rain in the background, and then we go into the guitars into the song. And it's very wonderful yet whimsical, this track. It's got some nice harmonies on it. Very cool way to start out the album. Celebration Song was one of the 5 tracks that was on this anthology CD that I picked up in the early 1990s. Celebration Song has a great hook in the verses. It's very short, but it's got a really cool feel to it with the sha-la-las and all that. Very cool. The next track is Can't You Hear Your Daddy's Heartbeat? This is full of energy and gusto. It's got very upbeat feel to it. One of several songs on here. They're about 2.5 minutes long. They come in, grab you, and it's over. And so much energy and passion in this track, as well as the next track, Got Love Because You Need It. That again has more of a rave up feel and very, very catchy, very upbeat, high paced, very, very cool. Cow Cow. This is a more elegant track where you have the acoustic guitars meeting the piano played by Nicky Hopkins. And probably has Steve Miller's best vocal performance on it. Wonderful, very elegant, very memorable track. And that piano coda at the end is beautiful, wonderful. This is one of my favorite songs from that era. This is also on anthology. I love this song. The next track is Seasons. Seasons has these mystic, nice guitar lines that are very memorable. Steve sings this one with a lot of expression as well. Very memorable song and very memorable lyrics on this as well. Very cool. Next track is Space Cowboy. This was the song we also heard back in the late 80s on Rock 107. Space Cowboy was referenced in his later #1 hit, The Joker from 1973. Space Cowboy has this really cool riff to it. It's got a lot more of a space feel to it, pardon the pun. And we got those keyboard sounds on there that sound like they're from outer space. A lot of references to space on it as well. Great guitar solo on here from Steve. One of his great early era tracks. Wonderful. Next track is LT's Midnight Dream, written by Lonnie Turner, who was the bass player in Steve Miller Band. This is more of a cool country blues. And this is a very good song as well. Love everything on here. My favorite song on the album, well, maybe this and Cow Cow, is My Dark Hour, which closes the album. The riff on here will sound very familiar to you. It was the riff that Steve would do for the song Fly Like an Eagle in 1976. This is a lot more hard hitting. This is a lot more loose. This is a lot more free. It doesn't have that everything must be in its right place feel that you had on those great singles from the late 70s. Steve Miller and Paul Ramone played on this song. Paul Ramone is Paul McCartney. Glenn Johns, who co-produced this album with Steve, was reached out to Paul on this song because the rest of the Beatles, who were recording an album at that point, I believe it may have been Let It Be, or maybe it was Abbey Road. The other Beatles didn't show up. Paul was there. Glenn reached out to Paul. Paul worked with Steve on this song. Steve played the guitar. He had the vocals on it. Paul played everything else. And this rocks like fuck. Excellent. A very hard hitting, very memorable. The prelude to Fly Like an Eagle, for my money, the better song, although Fly Like an Eagle was a huge hit and has great hooks to it. But this is cool. As I prefer this more, but Fly Like an Eagle is the bigger hit, but it's cool. And sums up a great album from 1969. One of my favorite Steve Miller Band albums right here in Brave New World. And this was released on Capitol Records, if I forgot to mention that earlier. Now, we're going to talk about Styx's album, Brave New World, from 1999. One thing I will mention about the Steve Miller Band album that I didn't before, this charted in I think number 22 or number 24 on Billboard, yet it hasn't certified, which I find surprising. Although the anthology one that I brought up, I believe this may be platinum at this point. I'm surprised that this album and Sailor, which were both in the top 25 on Billboard in the States back in the 60s, didn't certify gold. But I'm thinking it probably did. It just, Capitol just never got around to the certification. But anyway, we're going to talk about Styx now with their album, Brave New World. This would mark the return of Dennis DeYoung to the band. Or I'm sorry, it wouldn't mark the return. The return was on Edge of the Century, the album before this. This would be the last album with Dennis DeYoung in the band. And I believe this was the last time that Chuck Panazzo, their bass player, was a full-time member of the band. Now, as much as I love the Steve Miller album called Brave New World, I'm not high on this. And I wrote down a bunch of notes, and they're kind of going to go to the same feel. This hit number 175 on the Billboard charts in 1999. And it was produced by Tommy Shaw, Dennis DeYoung, and James J.Y. Young. J.Y. Young and Tommy Shaw are in the band to this day. So, what do I think of this album? It's a very schizophrenic album. It's a lot of it does not sound like Styx. They lost their foundation here big time. Some of these songs sound like they could be recorded by any adult contemporary band. Early on, with all the heavy auto-tune, it sounds like the freaking Backstreet Boys. But on the second half of the album, they get their mojo. They sound like Styx. The first side does not sound like Styx. There was one single on this album called Everything Is Cool. I'll get into that in a little bit, because that would be on the second half of the album. We start with I Will Be Your Witness, which is an attempt to sound contemporary, and it just does not work. The harmonies, as I mentioned, auto-tuned to the point it doesn't even sound like Styx. That's not the case for the whole album, but it certainly is here. The title song Brave New World, again, it's just too pop for me. It just doesn't sound like Styx. You got mandolin on here on a song that it doesn't require mandolin. I love mandolin, but not on this song. The song does not stand out. Will you? I'm sorry. While there's still time, acoustic ballad from Dennis DeYoung. Vocals are very angelic, but no grit, no soul. Adult contemporary, yes. They did adult contemporary songs in the past, and some of those songs were quite successful, particularly Babe. But Babe was a well constructed song that had great hooks. No hooks to be found here. Number one, this is okay, but again, it sounds indistinguishable from a lot of other musical acts at that time. Best New Face was written by Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades, his collaborator in Damn Yankees, and also the duo Shaw Blades. This sounds more Shaw Blades than it sounds Styx. It's okay, it just doesn't stand out. What have they done to you? It tries to rock, but the production is so clean that it just doesn't. It's not well written. Again, just sounds faceless. Falling Angel, we got some Dennis DeYoung schmaltz on here. But the harmonies are wonderful. I'll give it that. The harmonies have a very strong gospel feel. I'll talk about that about another song here. And Dennis sounds wonderful on it. I just don't think the song really stands out. Then we get to the second half of the album and the single, Everything is Cool. And now we sound like Styx. And now we have a good song. This is very strong. It feels like Styx in its presentation and the harmonies and the pre-choruses and the chorus itself. It sounds like a more modern Styx. It still sounds like Styx. It's very good. It's one of the best songs on the album. It was the right choice as a single. So props to CMC International and Styx for recognizing that. Great Expectations is a little different. It's a cool tune as well. Not as good as Everything is Cool, but I quite like this. I still like it better than everything else on the first half of the album. Heavy Water. Now we finally got a song with some grit and some guts to it and some passion. And it makes sense that James Young was the one who wrote this one. This has some great guitar work on it. It's by far the most rocking song on the album. It's very good. I'm not saying this is Blue Collar Man or Renegade, but it's still pretty good. High Crimes and Misdemeanors, Hypocrisy. Interesting track, ripping on the lyrics of hip hop and all that. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I like the presentation here. I like Dennis's vocal and the call and response in the harmonies. It's pretty cool. Just Fell. Okay. The horns don't work on it at all. I don't think the song really stands out. Goodbye Roseland, that's another Dennis DeYoung ballad with a gospel feel. I don't like it. Well, it's probably a little better than Fallen Angel, not as schmaltzy as Fallen Angel. I mean, it's okay. And we have the Brave New World reprise at the end, which is better than the original song, in my opinion, but not that good a song. But this album is very schizophrenic. There's a lot of stuff on here. It doesn't sound like Styx at all. And I'm not ripping on later Styx. I own Crash the Crown. I quite like that album. I'm not saying it's Pieces of Eight or The Grand Illusion, but it was pretty good. This, I don't think is pretty good. I'm not too high on this at all, but we'll get into the ratings in a little bit. And the last track, or sorry, the album we'll talk about is Iron Maiden's Brave New World from May of 2000. This was produced by Kevin Shirley, co-produced by their bassist and primary songwriter, Steve Harris. We got Bruce Dickinson back. We got Adrian Smith back. We got the 3-guitar attack. Adrian Smith, Dave Murray, and Yannick Gers. This was the first album with Bruce since Fear of the Dark in 1992. They did 2 albums with Blaze Bayley. In the meantime, during that time, metal had really fallen out of favor. And those albums didn't really sell very well, although there were good songs on both of them. Now, this album, solid. That's what I'd say about it. In my humble opinion, I said this on a Contrarians episode once when we talked about Iron Maiden Somewhere in Time, probably about 3 years ago. I don't think any rock band had as consistent a catalog in the 1980s like Iron Maiden. Everything they did was very good to great. Somewhere in Time, the album we discussed that day, was my least favorite. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I still like it a lot. This is solid. I like it more than the 2 records with Blaze Bayley. I do like this more than the last 2 records with Bruce Dickinson, No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark. I think what was happening here is they still wrote good songs. They lost that knack for the great one. And the songs were getting longer. So we're getting more into Dream Theater territory, where we're focusing more on epics and our stellar musicianship. You cannot deny Iron Maiden's musicianship. Now, the songs are good. I don't think there's filler on here. I think there's songs that are draggy a little bit more because of length. But if you like Iron Maiden, I think this is a good album, not a great one. The Wicker Man was the first single. I remember hearing this and being excited that we got Bruce back in the band. It's good. It's got a nice chorus on it. We got some nice soccer chants at the end. It's hard hitting. It's pretty cool. I like Ghost of the Navigator even more. That has a really cool intro, a lot of drama to it, very strong chorus. The verses play a lot like Can I Play with Madness from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, but still, I like the song a lot. The title track, Brave New World, is good. It takes a little bit to get going. It's got this nice ebb and flow to it. Blood Brothers, which was one of the songs that they were working on earlier when Blaze Bayley was still in the band. That one's pretty cool. This is a song that Steve wrote about his late father. I think this has a nice bridge to it. The guitar line on here, it's a really good hook. Definitely one of the highlights of the album to me. The Mercenary is shorter and harder hitting. I like this a lot. Dream of Mirrors is the longest song. That's over 9 minutes long. Normally, I'm not too high on the later epics. I love Rime of the Ancient Mariner from 84. Power Slave, of course. But this track, Dream of Mirrors, I think might be the best song on the album. It's very strong. I think Bruce sounds fantastic on it. There's, again, a lot of drama on it. It's got a nice slow build to it. It's a very cool track. Fallen Angel, this is shorter, more hard-hitting, good chorus. I like that. The Nomad, I think Bruce sounds excellent on it. Nice bridge on it. I think it goes a little too long. I feel the same way about the last 2 songs, Out of the Silent Planet, which was a single, and The Thin Line Between Love and Hate. Because what happens is it starts to sound draggy because you're getting hit with this same sound over and over. And a lot of these songs are over 6 minutes. By this point, from this point forward, everything was going to be over an hour long as far as the Iron Maiden albums. This was 10 songs, 67 minutes. Last 2 tracks are good, not great. Go on a little too long. Nothing's bad on here. Everything on here is solid. I like this more than I did back in the day. A good friend of mine gave me the cassette back in the day. I still have it. I like Dance of Death more than this album. And I think that's pretty close to those great albums in the 80s. And this is right below that. So this is Iron Maiden's Brave New World Brave New World from 2000. So, who wins the album war today? Okay, we will list these chronologically. Steve Miller Band, 9. Great album. Styx, 4.5. Doesn't get good at all till the second half of the album. And a lot of times it just doesn't sound Styx. It doesn't sound like Styx. Iron Maiden, 7. Good album. If you're a fan, you'll like it. It's good. I like it more than the last few albums, which are just too long and draggy for me. Although there are some good songs on all of them. But here, everything's decent. Some are very good. I don't think we have a knockout, but it's a solid album. I give it a 7. The winner today in the album war is the Steve Miller Band with their album Brave New World from 1969. So, what do you think of these albums? Have you heard these albums? What do you think of these artists? If you've heard or owned these albums, who do you think wins today's album war? What are your favorite songs by Steve Miller Band, Styx, and Iron Maiden? What are your favorite eras in these bands' catalogs? Because all of these bands have had long, storied careers. Please let me know in the comments on who you think wins today's album war. I will have another album war in the next week or so. August 23, Saturday, August 23, 2025, will be the return of the live cut series. I got some great guests lined up. Just to give you a little spoiler, Saturday, August 23, my guest will be the wonderful Daniel Bosch, also known as Bicycle Legs, from the YouTube channel Bicycle Legs Talks Music. We will discuss Warren Zevon's live album, Stand in the Fire. So I hope you can catch that when that one premieres on Saturday, August 23. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.